Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you and welcome to a very special session of the Doha debates sponsored by the Qatar Foundation. As you can see, we've left behind our regular venue in the Gulf and we're here in Britain as guests of the Oxford Union, the most famous debating chamber in the world and the inspiration for the Doha debates. The Union has a proud record of hosting controversial figures and discussing sensitive subjects. Malcolm X spoke here, so did Yasser Arafat and Richard Nixon. Former British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan called the Union the last bastion of free speech in the Western world. And for that and many other reasons, we're delighted to be here. Our debate tonight is also concerned with free speech, especially as it relates to criticism of the State of Israel. How far do Israel's friends go in seeking to protect its reputation? Why did former President Jimmy Carter claim it was now impossible to have a rational debate about Israel in the United States? Well, our motion reads, this House believes the pro-Israel lobby has successfully stifled Western debate about Israel's actions, and we have a panel well equipped to debate it. Speaking for the motion, Norman Finkelstein. He's a professor of political science, now teaching at DePaul University in Chicago. He's the son of Jewish Holocaust survivors and is well known for writing critically about Israel. He's been at the center of numerous heated academic and political disputes. Also for the motion, Andrew Coburn, an Irish journalist based in the United States for many years. He's an Indig who knows the pro-Israel lobby from the inside. He's a former deputy research director for the main lobby group, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or Aipac, and has served twice as US ambassador to Israel. He's now director of the Saban Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institution. And with him, David Aronovich, regular columnist for The Times. He's a former president of the National Union of Students and a frequent broadcaster. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel. So now let me please ask Norman Finkelstein to speak for the motion.
Thank you. I've devoted most of my adult life, a large part of it, to studying the Israel-Palestine conflict. And the most striking thing, when you look at the actual record on the conflict, the historical record, the human rights record, the diplomatic record, the most striking thing is, when you look at the actual record, how little controversy, how little dispute, how little disagreement there is among the experts and authorities. Yet, when you enter the arena of public debate, public discussion, the media, all of a sudden, the Israel-Palestine conflict becomes so controversial. It's as if nobody agrees on anything. And it's my view that the vast preponderance of this alleged controversy is fabricated. It's conjured up. It's contrived by the pro-Israel lobby in order to sow confusion, deflect attention from, and stifle discussion about the actual record which is so damning of Israel. The main means used are, first of all, to mystify the conflict, to claim that it's so complicated that it requires a knowledge the equivalent of rocket science to penetrate its mysteries. Secondly, the dragging in of extraneous issues, like the so-called new anti-Semitism. And finally, the vast proliferation of misinformation, disinformation, and sheer fraud, which masquerades as scholarship and which is then validated and even acclaimed by the mainstream media. That's the problem.
Norman Finkelstein, thank you very much indeed. Who has ever managed to stifle you? We look at you, there's a plethora of books out there, The Rise and Fall of Palestine, The Holocaust Industry, Reflections on the Exploitation of Jewish Suffering, Beyond Chutzpah. You're living proof that the debate hasn't been stifled at all, aren't you?
Well, I hate to personalize these things because they have only anecdotal value. But if you want to look at the record, you say, I have many books to my name. That's accurate.
And your views are out there?
That's inaccurate. I have never been on television in the United States. I have never been on mainstream radio in the United States. I am now 53 years old. I have my doctoral degree from Princeton. I have a list of publications.
You're still teaching at DePaul University.
As of this minute, I do not
it's not
have,
that precarious,
I
is
do
it?
not have a tenured job. I've been called the oldest living assistant professor in the United States, and that's probably true.
But you're not tucked away in some dusty room, unable to speak, are you? You're listened to. You have a constituency out there.
I have a constituency outside the mainstream media and abroad. But I don't think it would be accurate to say I have a constituency within the mainstream media in the United States. That would be an inaccurate statement.
And you have your critics, which you would expect, wouldn't you? You don't expect to say controversial things about Israel and have them lie down and just accept it without arguing,
No, I think criticism is a healthy phenomenon, but I don't think it's accurate to say that the criticism I articulate is heard in the mainstream media in the United States. That, I would say, is not a correct statement.
What about Jimmy Carter and his book, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid, published with great fanfare, upset a lot of people in the Jewish community? He, like you, is also living proof of the debate that you both claim isn't there. The debate is there. He's set up an enormous debate, hasn't he?
The fact of the matter is, and that was the point of my introductory remarks, if you actually read Jimmy Carter's book, it's a very tepid rendering of the actual documentary records. And the question is, why does a tepid rendering of the documentary record evoke hysteria in the United States?
Okay. Norman Finkelstein, thank you very much indeed. Now let me please ask Martin Indyk to speak against the motion.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think the fact that Doha Debates has come to the Oxford Union, the home of debating, is an indication that there's no stifling of the debate. But let me just pick up on the Jimmy Carter example. He has written 3 books highly critical of Israel. The last one, Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid, was number 4 on the New York Times bookseller list. By his own account, as he went on a book tour around the United States, he was greeted by thousands of people who turned out to hear his anti-Israel message. He was hosted, unlike Norman, on all the major network TV talk shows. He had op-ed pieces published in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Boston Globe, summarizing his argument. Of course, Carter managed to generate a firestorm of criticism. But that's the best evidence that there's no stifling of the debate. In fact, the debate has been very intense. The second case, of course, is the even more famous one that you'll be aware of Steve Walt and John Mearsheimer. These 2 American academics from establishment universities, Chicago and Harvard, wrote a very lengthy paper on the Israel lobby. It was first published here by the London Review of Books. It claimed that there was a vast cabal of pro-Israel supporters who constituted a powerful machine that was distorting the American national interest in Israel's favor. Not surprisingly, it too set off a firestorm of debate, including a symposium in the prestigious Foreign Policy magazine, an unprecedented 2-day debate on National Public Radio, several articles in the New York Review of Books, a debate at the New York's famous Cooper Union, op-ed pieces in the Washington Post and New York Times, and articles in Commentary, US News and World Report, the American Prospect, New York Sun, etc., etc. The list is endless of people who make this argument about Israel's sins and the power of the Israel lobby.
Time, please.
What they all have in common is that they all claim that they're being stifled.
Martin Indyk, thank you very much indeed. You mentioned the article by the US academics Stephen Walt and John Mearsheimer, published by the London Review of Books. You omitted to say it was published by the London Review of Books because they couldn't get it published in the States.
No, I did say that, and it's an interesting question, Tim. I checked with the Atlantic Monthly where they tried to get it published.
Yeah.
And I talked to the senior people there, and what they told me was it was far too long, and Walt and Mearsheimer would not agree to cut it.
So it was
that's why
simply for that?
They said they had no problem.
And you know for a fact that they didn't try elsewhere to get it.